Please welcome Rishad Tobaccowala.
Thank you. And we did a survey of national advertisers to figure out how they perceived your industry. And this presentation will have 3 sections to it. The first one will be how the industry is perceived. The second is some thoughts about how the industry can be upgraded. And the third is how all of us can get upgraded. So that's 3 sections. For those taking notes or have seen presentations from me before, there are 2 slides, no videos, okay? And 20 minutes. So with that being said, the survey, which was finished in March, occurred between January and March, and there are 6 big themes coming out of it, and broken up really into 2 sections. One is, to a great extent, strategically, your industry is in exactly the right place. And this is because, A, as Nick mentioned, clients increasingly are speaking less and less about consumer impressions, and they're speaking more and more about people's journeys. So if you go into the boardroom, they're now talking about people's journeys and much less about consumer impressions. You all clearly fit into people's journey by the definition of the industry. The second, which is also extremely important, is people are increasingly talking about experiences versus impressions. And the third is digital is yesterday. Omnichannel is today and tomorrow. And the entire idea of omnichannel is the way, to a great extent, a Best Buy and a Walmart are competing with an Amazon. Omnichannel is what makes Domino's Pizza not a pizza company, but a delivery company. And so omnichannel, extremely important. Customer journey, extremely important. Expressions, extremely important. And that is the strategic rationale for this industry. And clients basically say, you all are particularly good at those 3. But there's something else that's important. And it was mentioned before also by Nick. This industry, broadly, I'm not talking about your industry, but the marketing industry, has become too fixated with data, too fixated with numbers, and too fixated with plumbing. Everyone's forgotten the poetry. And to a great extent, people choose with their hearts, and they use numbers to justify what they just did. And it's one of the reasons why brands are not growing. You can target everybody down to the microsecond, but there's nothing compelling to say, who the hell cares? And again, this industry has the 3 big things that people are looking for. One is the creative canvas of being able to tell stories. The second is the flexibility, because of all the different things, as we saw in the Amazon presentation, one could actually do. And third is the inability to avoid it. And therefore, where 30% of inventory on television will disappear over the next 5 years, there's all kinds of ad blockers and streaming and a whole bunch of other things. If you want to engage with people, you have a creative canvas that, to a great extent, is highly flexible and cannot be avoided. So from a strategic and from a creative perspective, this is the industry to be in, and that's what our clients are saying. These are national advertisers. There are 3 obstacles, and the obstacles are, we aren't exactly sure how to measure it, is sort of one. The other is, sometimes people just come and they sell stuff to us. They don't actually solve many things for us. And the third one is, oh my God, it's so complex. The analogy I use is television is like you go into an aquarium and you got lots of fishes, but you kind of know what they are. You go to like radio, it's like going to an aviary. But when you come into the out-of-home industry, it's got a zoo, right? And a zoo so big that it actually even has fish and it has birds, but it's got all kinds of different animals. And that makes it very, very hard and complex sometimes to an extent. So those are the three hurdles. Moving forward, those hurdles are relatively small compared to the massive strategic and creative advantages. So a thought is all of you all as an industry, and I keep using the word industry because I don't use the word medium. You're not a medium. You're an industry. You're an industry that markets and helps people build brands and sell things. So with that being said, I would use the word SAVE, S-A-V-E. And S is solutions. It's very, very important to solve the problem that clients actually want. And often we go in and we say, we're a horse, eat us. I don't want to eat a horse, right? If you're at a zoo, you go to a horse, I don't want to eat a horse, right? Or you basically say something else. You want to basically say, what do you need? And then what do I fit? Or how do I fit? And since many of you all have many different types of products and services, let's figure out what actually fits. The other one is to really think about how people interact, because the people that really matter is not actually either the agencies or the clients. It's the people we eventually sell to. And I will tell you, marketers, as was mentioned by Nick, no one is as confused as a marketer today in America. They're insecure, highly confused, because the world is changing. So if someone can go to them with insights about how people use stuff and how you can engage with them, they're willing to listen. That's number S. A is access. The access is, where should one get one's money from? I do completely agree with Nick that you should be an $18 billion, $24 billion, $30 billion industry. But to do that, you're going to have to access money from two different places. One is television, and the other is digital. But how you do it is interesting. So with regard to television, the first thing you want to basically say is, hey, with regard to television, I can basically tell your stories in new ways. For those of you who watched the last episode of Game of Thrones, Tyrion basically says nothing is as powerful as a story. So for television, it's very good as a storytelling medium, but you can expand it and tease it, as again you saw in the Amazon example. So to a great extent, with television, you can expand one story. The other thing you can do with television is you can get reach, because increasingly television is being watched by the same people again and again, and most of them are old. Yes, we have money, but maybe we don't have too much to live, right? And dead customers are not worth anything, even if they're rich. And the third is, with regard to television, you also can find ways to cut the big problem they have, which is people are skipping and there are less and less ads. So you can basically say, hey, look, I can expand your story, I can reach more people, and surprisingly, I can eliminate the issue of ads being cut off. With regard to online, the story is simple. The first story basically is, particularly with regard to social and other media, nothing supplements social media like your industry. Because it's all about experiences and getting together and big things. As I've often basically said, or I didn't often say, I made it up yesterday, so I've said it once, but I'm saying it a second time, okay, is even a static billboard is like Instagram on steroids, right? So everyone gets all thing about Instagram, well, just imagine if you could put somebody on a billboard. That's Instagram on steroids, because all of us are basically burning with great desire to be famous in front of a camera, so that's one way we can do it. So clearly it does that. The second is, it's safe, non-toxic, and doesn't set off political problems, which is what today online basically does. So you can say, hey, I don't do that. And the third, to a very great extent, is for God's sakes, you can actually tell a story. Online, increasingly, you cannot tell a story. The only story is the story I tell you about myself, but no one's really interested, right? And so those are things where you go in and you augment, solve a problem, and extend each of these two media. You don't fight them, right? But you go in and say, I can take you. Hey, television buyer, I can expand television for you. Online buyer, I can expand online. And that's going to be very important, and it also requires our industry to change, because we sometimes put your industry in a basement somewhere. And it has to be much more strategic, because you all do solve the strategic problem of omnichannel, of journeys and experiences, and you solve the problem of augmenting, expanding, and building upon television and online where all the money is. Third section is about upgrading. One of the key things I have learned over many, many years, and billions of dollars of acquisitions and many years in a company, is there are only two ways to upgrade anything. You can upgrade the people, or you can change the people. Period, over and out. All this mergers and acquisition stuff, all these press releases go out, all of that is all drama. Everything is easy, but people get in the way, so unless you can bring people along, it doesn't work. And to a great extent, as an industry, the potential, strategic potential, and the dollar potential is enormous. But to get there, the hardest thing is not technology. The hardest thing is changing the industry and changing yourselves. That's what we've discovered in our industry. For 5 years, at least in my company, we're in the process of a massive reinvention. And doing the M&A stuff is relatively easy, it just costs some money, right? Changing the way we work, changing incentive systems, changing the way things work and people come in is very, very difficult. And to that, I would give you two pieces of advice. The first one is the future does not fit in the containers of the past, which primarily basically means that your success, which has been significant, as Nancy put out, has been built on yesterday and today, but may not be optimized for tomorrow. So you'll need to think about that. On the other hand, if you don't deliver today, there will not be a tomorrow, right? So if you focus on tomorrow, you lose your job today. If you focus on today, you may not get to tomorrow. So what is someone to do? What you have to do is you've got to basically decide that, unlike Andy Grove, who basically said only the paranoid will survive, which is pretty silly in a world that is connected and requires collaboration, which probably explains why Intel has missed everything in the last 5 years, okay? Because they see everybody as the enemy, which is pretty stupid, okay? Instead, I would suggest that only the schizophrenic will thrive, which basically means you need to run two models simultaneously. One is a model focused on today, so you make the numbers, and another model focused on tomorrow, which might even destroy your today. That's number one. Number two, you need to focus your efforts on making sure your company does well, and the second is that your industry does well, because that's very important. The third is also extremely important from a broad, very perspective, is how you all change. And for you all as people to change, think about where you all are going. And my basic belief is this is the story you must tell about your industry. So when I talked about S was solutions, A was access, V is sort of measurement and values, but E is how do you basically engage with people about your industry. And that is you are the industry for tomorrow's marketing. Because you're the only industry where three key things that are destroying almost every other industry in media comes to help you. More and more screens with declining prices is causing fragmentation and proliferation, and the other issue, but is giving you engagement. Networks basically are creating a problem of commoditizing inventory in other places. Here it allows you to create the next mass media by connecting all your out-of-home. And the third, which is as important, is mobility. And to a great extent, mobility and moving around is what you're built for. So while mobility and screens and networks are hurting newspapers and television and radio, and to a great extent, obviously magazines, it's coming to help your industry. And your industry is so much of the future that, as Nancy mentioned, all the big digital companies use you. As I mentioned to your board, they don't eat their own dog food. They eat your dog food. So you should go to everybody and say, I'm the future. But to be the future, in addition to basically upgrading the ways you'll work, you need to upgrade yourselves. And there are two things I've learned about that. The first is something which is, I often say, and people laugh, but I'll tell you it's actually true, which is change sucks. Okay? So when someone tells me to change, I basically tell them, I'm happy, you change. I'm successful, you change, you idiot. I'm perfectly fine. You got a problem, you change. Okay? But as was basically said by a famous general, while change is hard, irrelevance is even worse. And one of the key things is how much I hate change is stated simply by the fact that I've worked at the very same company for 37 years. Lived in the same city for 39, met my wife 48 years ago, but we would not have a child marriage, okay? I hate change, but what I've begun to realize is the only way for things to stay good is we are going to have to change. And to that, there's only one way I know, which is we have to upgrade our mental operating systems and our emotional operating systems is the only way out. And to do that every morning, not here, because I was up late last night, I basically get up at 4:30 in the morning and I study. And I've done this every day for as many days as possible to basically learn new things. And when I do, I share some of those things, because it's the only way to get better is to learn. And that's what I would suggest to you all. As much time as you spend about thinking about what you eat and how much you move your body, think about how you train your mind and what you put in it. Because that will determine the future of this industry more than anything else. And with that being said, I'm going to put up my Twitter handle. I think it's going to come up. That's it. Very simple name, okay? And I've got good friends at Twitter, so I got a good handle. So that handle is where I basically post a lot of the things that I basically learn. So since I've been here, I've basically talked about how the demographics of millennials are so dramatic that they earn 40%, their wealth is 40% less than Generation X, which is pretty formidable. What the 3 key rules of data are, who to follow with regard to someone who's a very big creative person, which nobody actually has heard about. I've taken pictures when I was coming here 30 minutes apart, somewhere around the Southwest. I retweeted my thing about Instagram, basically, or billboards being the high port of Instagram. And I've looked outside the industry by basically thinking about how black women in Chicago are changing political structures. So it's not just about our industry, because it's about people. You have to think very broadly. Now I'm going to ask you for a favor. And the favor is this, since we had Amazon come before, but it doesn't have to be Amazon. Pick up your phones. If you do have an Amazon app, go to the Amazon app and put in my name, which is spelled like that. And this is what you might see. Can we see the next slide, please? That, okay? So that is a book that is about to come out in January. But I have to be a marketer. And what tends to happen is usually the books come out 3 months in advance. But I convinced my publisher to put it out for pre-order 9 months in advance. And it's available in Kindle and Audible and CD-ROM for some reason if you want it, okay? So if you could go in and order those, as many as you can, both for yourself, like they basically say in Chicago, vote early and vote often, okay? So please order as much of that, and that I would appreciate it. And I think that'll train you in a lot of interesting ways, including how to upgrade your operating system, why there's too much math and too little meaning, and why change sucks and how you can do something about it. Thank you very much.